Mr. Hale, don't sign that contract. The voice came from behind the billionaire's chair just as the gold pen touched the paper. Every conversation inside the private dining room stopped. Ethan Hale slowly lifted his eyes. Around the polished mahogany table sat 6 of the most powerful investors in New York, men and women who controlled banks, shipping companies, and technology firms. Beyond the rain-streaked windows, the city glittered 40 floors below them, cold and distant. Standing beside Ethan was a young waitress in a plain black uniform. Her name tag read Maya. One of the investors laughed first. It was a short, disbelieving sound, followed by several others. Maya's serving tray trembled slightly in her hands, making the crystal water glasses whisper against one another. Ethan did not laugh. He had spent 11 months negotiating the merger in front of him. If signed, it would create the largest renewable energy corporation in the country. Thousands of jobs depended on it. His board had called it the defining deal of his career. And a waitress had just told him to walk away. "Excuse me?" Ethan asked. Maya's face had gone pale, but she did not lower her eyes. She could feel every expensive suit in the room turning toward her. Her shoes were old, carefully polished to hide the cracks near the soles. Inside the pocket of her apron was a small blue notebook with frayed corners, the only thing she always carried with her. Across the table, Victor Langford leaned back in his chair. He was Ethan's future business partner, a silver-haired financier with a calm smile and a reputation for destroying anyone who stood between him and a deal. "This is absurd," Victor said. "Someone call security." Maya's manager appeared near the doorway almost immediately. His face burned with humiliation. "Maya, step outside. Now." She should have obeyed. She needed this job. Her rent was already 12 days late, and there were 2 unopened medical bills inside her backpack in the employee locker room. One complaint from a guest like Victor Langford could make sure she never worked in another luxury hotel again. But Maya looked down at the contract. On page 47, beneath a paragraph no one in the room seemed concerned about, was a line she had seen before. "Not in a business school. Not in a newspaper." In the blue notebook hidden against her hip. Ethan noticed her fingers pressing against the apron pocket. He set the pen down. Victor's smile disappeared. "What exactly do you think you know?" Ethan asked. Maya swallowed. Her hands were still shaking, but her voice was steady. "I know the company named in that clause doesn't exist." The room became so quiet that the rain against the windows sounded like fingertips tapping on glass. Victor gave another laugh, but this one came too quickly. "She has no idea what she's talking about." Maya turned toward him. For the first time, fear flashed across Victor's face, not much, only a tightening near his eyes, but Ethan saw it. So did Maya. She slowly placed the serving tray on the table. Then she reached into her apron and removed the worn blue notebook. The manager stepped forward to stop her. Maya opened it to a page covered in faded handwriting and placed it beside the unsigned contract. "There's another version of this agreement," she said. "And I know where the hidden documents are." 3 hours earlier, Maya Torres had stood in the narrow kitchen of her basement apartment, counting coins beside a bowl of instant oatmeal. The radiator had stopped working 2 nights ago. Cold air slipped through the cracked window frame, stirring the overdue notices taped to the refrigerator. One was from the electric company. Another was from the hospital where her mother had spent her final weeks. Maya turned both envelopes face down. On the small table sat the worn blue notebook. Its cover had once been bright, but years of rain, dust, and careful handling had faded it to the color of an old winter sky. A thin black stain ran across one corner, and several pages had been repaired with clear tape. Maya opened it every morning. Not because it contained money. Because it contained her father's handwriting. Before his death, Daniel Torres had worked as a night janitor inside the headquarters of Langford Capital. He emptied wastebaskets, polished conference tables, and moved silently through offices where people rarely remembered his name. But Daniel had not always been a janitor. Years earlier, he had studied accounting at a community college while working 2 jobs. He never earned his degree. When Maya's mother became ill, tuition became medicine, and his textbooks were replaced by cleaning supplies. Still, he never stopped learning. At night, while Maya waited for him in the building lobby, Daniel taught her how businesses moved money, how contracts could hide danger behind harmless language, and how dishonest people often buried their biggest lies beneath the smallest print. Numbers don't whisper, he once told her. People just choose not to listen. After he died in what the police call a highway accident, the notebook was all Maya had left of him. It contained dates, company names, copied clauses, and strange diagrams linking one corporation to another. Most of it made no sense to her when she was 16. Now, at 27, it made too much sense. Maya closed the notebook and slid it into her apron before leaving for work. At the hotel, no one knew she had spent 2 years studying business law at night. No one knew she had dropped out when her mother's cancer returned. To the guests upstairs, she was only the quiet waitress who refilled glasses before they were empty and apologized when wealthy men forgot her name. Her manager, Mr. Collins, handed her the private dining assignment without looking up. 42nd floor. Important people. I know. Then stay invisible. Maya nodded. She had become good at being invisible. Inside the service elevator, she leaned against the steel wall and closed her eyes. Her feet already hurt from the morning shift. A small tear had opened near the cuff of her uniform, and she covered it with her hand as the numbers climbed. When the doors opened, Victor Langford was standing in the hallway. Maya recognized him immediately. She had seen his face in her father's notebook, taped beside a newspaper clipping more than 10 years old. Victor did not recognize her. He walked past without even glancing in her direction, speaking quietly into his phone. Once hail signs, move everything before midnight. Maya froze. The elevator doors began closing behind her. Then she heard Victor add 4 words that turned her blood cold. Use the Northbridge account. Northbridge. The same name written across 7 pages of her father's notebook. The same company that had supposedly been dissolved 12 years ago. Maya entered the dining room with the tray balanced in both hands. She watched the lawyers arrange the documents. She watched Victor smile. She watched Ethan Hale pick up the gold pen. And in that moment, she understood why her father had kept the notebook. He had not been collecting business secrets. He had been trying to leave evidence behind. Security arrived less than a minute after Maya placed the blue notebook beside the contract. 2 uniformed guards stepped into the private dining room, their dark jackets still wet from the rain outside. Mr. Collins followed them, breathing hard, his face tight with panic. Remove her immediately, Victor Langford said. One guard reached toward Maya's arm. Wait, Ethan Hale ordered. The guard stopped. Ethan remained seated, but the room had shifted around him. Moments earlier, everyone had been waiting for his signature. Now every eye was fixed on the waitress standing beside his chair. Victor leaned forward, forcing a patient smile. Ethan, this woman serves drinks for a living. Are we seriously delaying a $4 billion agreement because she overheard a company name? Maya felt the insult land, but she did not react. She had heard worse. She remembered standing in financial aid offices while administrators explained that grief was not an excuse for missed deadlines. She remembered customers snapping their fingers at her, lawyers leaving coins beside $1,000 bottles of wine, and managers telling her that intelligent women did not end up carrying trays. Her father had taught her something else. Never raise your voice when the truth is already loud enough. Ethan reached for the notebook, but Maya placed 2 fingers gently on its cover. Please don't open it yet. A murmur passed around the table. Victor laughed again. Convenient. Maya looked directly at Ethan. If I'm wrong, you can fire me, have me arrested, and sign the contract before dessert. But first, ask Mr. Langford one question. Ethan's expression hardened. What question? Ask him who owns Northbridge Holdings. Victor's hand moved toward his water glass, then stopped halfway. The lead attorney, Caroline Reeves, pulled the contract closer. She was known for dismantling witnesses in courtrooms and negotiating deals that made headlines. Her eyes moved quickly over page 47. Northbridge is listed as an independent overseas compliance vendor, she said. Its ownership is irrelevant. No, Maya replied quietly. Its ownership is the entire deal. Caroline looked up sharply. Mr. Collins stepped toward Maya. You're finished here. Maya removed her name tag and placed it beside the notebook. Her hand trembled only once. I understand. For a moment, Ethan saw something in her face that none of the others seemed to notice. She was terrified. Not confused. Not reckless. Terrified. Yet she had still spoken. Ethan turned to Victor. Who owns Northbridge? Victor's jaw tightened. It's a third-party entity managed through international trustees. Standard procedure. That wasn't my question. The rain struck harder against the windows. Far below, traffic crawled through Manhattan like red and white veins of light. Victor stood. This meeting is over. We can reconvene when you're prepared to act like a businessman instead of entertaining a desperate employee's fantasy. Maya lowered her eyes. On Victor's left cuff was a small silver emblem shaped like a compass. She had seen that emblem before. It was drawn repeatedly through the final pages of her father's notebook, beside dates, bank transfers, and one sentence written so heavily that the pen had nearly torn through the paper. Maya opened the notebook at last. Several pages were missing. Her breath caught. She flipped backward, then forward, searching faster. The section containing the copied account numbers and signatures had been carefully removed. Someone had taken them. Victor watched her confusion, and the corner of his mouth lifted. You see, he said. There is nothing. Maya stared at the torn paper fibers along the spine. Then she noticed a thin line of black ink beneath the notebook's damaged back cover. Her father had hidden something inside it. She slid one fingernail beneath the lining. A folded hotel storage receipt fell onto the table. Ethan picked it up. Printed across the top was the name of the building they were standing in. And beneath it, in Daniel Torres's handwriting, were 6 words. Locker 317. Open only if I'm gone. Ethan read the words twice. Locker 317. Open only if I'm gone. The receipt was 11 years old, its edges soft from being hidden beneath the notebook's lining. A faded stamp showed that the locker had been rented inside the hotel's underground storage level, long before the building became one of the city's most exclusive properties. Victor's face lost its color. Only for a second. Then he reached across the table. That belongs to me. Ethan moved the receipt out of reach. No, Maya said. It belonged to my father. The room went still again. Mr. Collins looked between them, confused. Caroline Reeves was already typing into her phone, searching archived property records. The security guards remained near the door, uncertain now about whom they were supposed to protect. Victor adjusted his cuff. This is becoming theatrical. Ethan stood and buttoned his jacket. Then let's end the show. The elevator ride to the basement felt longer than 42 floors. No one spoke. Maya stood near the back wall, gripping the blue notebook against her chest. Ethan watched her reflection in the polished steel. Her shoulders were rigid, but her eyes were focused. Victor stood beside Caroline, tapping one finger against his leg. When the elevator opened, cold fluorescent light spilled over a narrow concrete hallway. The luxury of the hotel disappeared underground. There were no crystal chandeliers, no marble floors, only exposed pipes, gray walls, and the low mechanical hum of the building. Mr. Collins led them past laundry carts and maintenance rooms until they reached an old steel door marked archived storage. He entered a code. Inside, hundreds of narrow lockers lined the walls. Locker 317 was near the floor. Maya knelt. The receipt had no key attached, only a handwritten sequence of numbers beneath her father's name. She entered them into the rusted combination lock. Nothing happened. Victor exhaled softly. Maya tried again. The lock remained closed. Her hands began to shake. She looked down at the blue notebook. On the back cover, beneath years of scratches, her father had drawn a tiny compass with one point darker than the others. North. Maya turned the lock one final time, reversing the first number and following the sequence backward. A metallic click echoed through the room. No one moved. Maya opened the locker. Inside was an old janitor's jacket, carefully folded. Beneath it sat a sealed plastic envelope and a small digital recorder wrapped in newspaper. Caroline stepped closer. The envelope contained copies of corporate transfers, internal memos, and signed authorizations connecting Northbridge Holdings to a private trust controlled by Victor Langford. But Ethan's eyes stopped on a document bearing his own company's seal. It authorized the transfer of billions in assets immediately after the merger. His signature was already on it. Except Ethan had never signed it. "That's impossible," he whispered. Maya picked up the recorder. There was only one file. She pressed play. Static filled the storage room, followed by the tired voice of Daniel Torres. "If anyone finds this, Northbridge is not a vendor. It is where Mr. Langford hides stolen money. And if Ethan Hale signs the merger, they will make him responsible for all of it." Victor lunged toward the recorder. One of the guards blocked him. Daniel's voice continued. "I copied everything before they discovered me. I gave the originals to someone I trusted. Her name is Caroline Reeves." Every face turned toward the attorney. Caroline stood frozen beneath the cold basement light. Then, slowly, she reached inside her leather briefcase. "I was hoping," she said, her voice breaking, "that no one would ever force me to open this." She removed a thick red folder sealed with Daniel Torres's signature. And Victor Langford stopped smiling. Caroline placed the red folder on a maintenance card as though it were something fragile enough to break the entire building. For 11 years, she had carried the same secret from office to office, courthouse to courthouse, never opening it, never destroying it, and never finding the courage to deliver it. Victor stared at her. "You gave me your word." Caroline's face tightened. "No. I gave Daniel mine." Maya looked up sharply. The name sounded different when spoken by someone who had known her father, not as a janitor, not as an invisible man pushing a cleaning cart through empty hallways, but as Daniel. A person worth remembering. Caroline rested one hand on the folder. Years earlier, before she became one of the most powerful corporate attorneys in New York, she had been a frightened first-year associate at Langford Capital. She was 26, buried in debt, and desperate to prove she belonged among people who had attended better schools and inherited better names. One winter night, Caroline discovered irregular transfers connected to Northbridge Holdings. She reported them. The next morning, Victor called her into his office and accused her of manipulating company records. By noon, her access card was disabled. By evening, security was searching her desk. Daniel had been cleaning the hallway when he saw Caroline crying beside the service elevator, clutching a cardboard box filled with her belongings. He could have walked past. Instead, he opened a supply closet and hid her inside. Then he returned to Victor's office and quietly removed the documents that proved Caroline had told the truth. "He risked everything for me," Caroline said. "And I was too afraid to do the same for him." Daniel met her 2 days later at a bus station. He handed her the original files and asked her to keep them somewhere Victor could never reach. Caroline promised she would take them to federal investigators. But before she could, Daniel died. Then the threats began. Photographs of Caroline's younger brother appeared beneath her apartment door. Anonymous callers described the route her mother took to church. Victor never admitted responsibility, but he did not have to. Caroline hid the folder in a private vault and built a career powerful enough that no one could easily silence her. Yet each year she waited, the truth became heavier. Maya held the blue notebook against her chest. "My father trusted you." Caroline lowered her eyes. "He trusted people before they deserved it. Maya wanted to be angry. For years, she had believed her father died leaving nothing behind but unpaid bills and questions. Caroline had possessed the answers all along. But then Maya noticed the red thread tied around the folder. The same red thread her mother once used to repair the torn sleeve of Daniel's work jacket. Caroline had preserved everything exactly as he gave it to her. "He saved my life," Caroline whispered. But that wasn't the first time. She opened the folder. Inside was an old tuition receipt from a community college, paid in cash. The student name printed across it was Caroline Reeves. Daniel had found her weeks before the Northbridge discovery, sitting alone in the lobby after learning she would be removed from law school for missing a payment. He had used nearly all the money he had saved for his own accounting classes to cover the balance. He never asked to be repaid. He only told her that someone with the courage to challenge powerful people should not lose her future over one unpaid bill. Maya closed her eyes. The notebook, the secret files, the years of silence, everything had begun with one poor man giving away money he could not afford to lose. Caroline turned to Ethan. "The folder contains the original transfers, recorded calls, and the real ownership structure of Northbridge. Your merger was never meant to build a company. It was meant to bury a crime inside your name." Ethan looked at Victor. For the first time, the billionaire did not appear powerful. He looked like a man realizing how close he had come to losing everything because he had ignored the people standing outside the boardroom. Maya opened the blue notebook to its final page. Beneath her father's compass drawing was one last sentence she had never noticed before. "When the rich close every door, leave the truth with someone kind enough to open one." Maya looked at Caroline. Caroline began to cry. And somewhere above them, 42 floors away, Ethan Hale's unsigned contract still waited beside a gold pen. By sunrise, the gold pen was still lying beside the unsigned contract. The private dining room no longer looked like a place where powerful people controlled the future. The chairs were empty. The untouched coffee had gone cold. Rainwater traced pale lines down the windows as federal investigators carried boxes of files toward the elevators. Victor Langford left the hotel between two officers. He did not look at Maya. Caroline stood near the doorway, answering questions with the red folder held firmly against her chest. For the first time in 11 years, she was no longer protecting the secret that had imprisoned her. She was protecting the truth. Ethan remained beside the window, watching the city wake beneath him. He had built his life on the belief that intelligence was measured by titles, expensive degrees, and the confidence to speak inside rooms where billions of dollars changed hands. Yet every lawyer at the table had missed the trap. Every executive had trusted the polished presentation. Only the waitress had noticed the line that could have destroyed them all. Maya stood near the service cart, still wearing her torn black uniform. Without the rush of danger, exhaustion finally reached her. Her hands felt heavy. Her feet ached. She knew Mr. Collins had removed her from the schedule. She also knew the rent was still overdue. Truth had saved a billionaire, but it had not yet solved the ordinary problems waiting inside her basement apartment. Ethan turned toward her. "What do you want from me?" Maya looked surprised. "Nothing. You stopped me from losing my company." "My father stopped you," she said softly. "I only finished what he started." Ethan glanced at the blue notebook in her hands. "No. Your father left a door. You were brave enough to open it." Later that morning, Ethan gathered every hotel employee in the ballroom. Mr. Collins stood near the back, unable to meet Maya's eyes. Ethan told them what had happened. He did not describe Maya as lucky. He did not call her a simple waitress who happened to overhear something important. He spoke about her knowledge, her courage, and the calm way she had protected people who had laughed at her. Then he announced that Maya's job would be waiting for her as long as she wanted it. But another opportunity was waiting too. Ethan offered to pay the remaining cost of her education, without conditions. After graduation, she would have a position in his company's ethics and compliance division, working with Caroline to build a system that allowed every employee, from executives to janitors, to report wrongdoing without fear. Maya looked at the ballroom filled with people who had once barely noticed her. "I don't want my father's name on a building," she said. "I want it on something that helps people speak." 1 year later, the Daniel Torres Integrity Program opened its doors. It provided legal protection, scholarships, and emergency support for low-income workers who exposed corruption. Caroline became its first director. Ethan required every senior executive in his company to spend 1 day each year listening to employees whose names rarely appeared on office doors. Maya returned to school. She kept working weekend shifts at the hotel, not because she had to, but because she refused to become ashamed of the uniform she had once worn. On graduation day, she carried the worn blue notebook across the stage. Inside the cover was a new photograph, Maya in her cap and gown, Caroline beside her, and Ethan standing in the background with his hands folded and his eyes full of quiet gratitude. The final page still held Daniel's words. "When the rich close every door, leave the truth with someone kind enough to open one." Sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the only one truly paying attention. And sometimes a small act of kindness travels silently through the years until it returns powerful enough to save an entire life. Never judge someone by the uniform they wear, the job they do, or the chair they are allowed to sit in. Because dignity does not come from wealth. It comes from what you choose to do when speaking the truth could cost you everything. If this story moved you, share it with someone who deserves to be seen. And remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories about ordinary people whose courage changes the world.